Now it's time for Inspirational Women, and my guest, Suzanne Maggio, a licensed clinical social worker and university lecturer in psychology, counseling, and social work. Suzanne is also an author, and her latest book about a great journey on foot, Estrellas, Moments of Illumination along El Camino de Santiago, is the focus of our conversation this morning. Suzanne Maggio, good morning. Thank you so greatly for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, you are just so amazing. Of course, writing a book to me is really just an amazing accomplishment. And this book, Estrellas, you
got it right.
Estrellas is just so captivating. It's lyrical. It's so beautiful. However, as beautiful as it is, what you did for the content of this book, the walk that you did in Europe, well, two of them now because you've just come back from one, describing for us this trek along El Camino de Santiago. That's correct, right?
Correct. You got it.
Okay. So you've done these major treks all within basically the last 5 years. So how are you feeling?
Well, I feel great, actually. You know, it's just, as I like to say, it's just walking. And if you can walk, and actually even if you can't walk, because people do it in other ways, there are ways to do these solo trips, or, you can go with a friend, of course, and travel these extraordinary journeys across different parts of the world. And I happen to do two different pilgrimages. I've actually walked two Caminos. The first one was the Camino Francés, which is the one the book is about. And that pilgrimage goes from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France, across the Pyrenees, and to the west to the east of, to the west, that's right. To the west of Spain. Sorry about that. To Santiago de Compostela. And then I did one from Oviedo, which is in the north of Spain, down to Santiago de Compostela. So the Caminos de Santiago all end in Santiago. There are routes in Portugal. There's an English route that goes from sort of the west coast down to Santiago. There is a French leg of the journey that goes from Chemin du Puy to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which then continues to Santiago. So there are many different walks within Spain. And the one that I just recently returned from was the Via Francigena, which is a pilgrimage that in totality goes from Canterbury all the way to Apulia, which is in the south of Italy, where someone can take a boat to Jerusalem. So it is, I walked from Lucca to Rome, which was about 19 days and about 370 or something like, that's right, 370 kilometers, which was, a long walk as well. The first one, the Camino that I wrote about in the book, took me a full month to walk, 500 miles from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago.
Right. So that was the first one, 500 miles that you walked on your own. And you were saying, well, anyone who can walk or move. But I'm thinking, I can walk, but the idea of walking 500 miles in 1 month, it's hard for me to really embrace that or conceptual. No, I think I could maybe embrace it. I'm not sure. But you were 60 as well when you started this. So, that in itself is another motivating factor, but also so daunting.
Yes, if you think about it that way, that's absolutely true. When you think about it as 500 miles and walking a month or more, some people go slower, and some people actually, believe it or not, go a little quicker. But as with most challenges in life, one of the very useful and successful ways to handle them is literally in small chunks, one step at a time. So the way I thought about the Camino, yes, of course I knew I was going to be walking for a month, but it really was one day at a time. Sometimes it was 1 hour at a time, one step at a time. There was a point at which I had terrible blisters, and to walk, I was in a lot of pain. And then we really were trying to kind of take it one step at a time. Could I put pressure on my feet? Could I make it to the first place to get coffee? You know, it was that whole idea of kind of just doing what's right in front of you ends up being one of the things that you learn as you walk. It's overwhelming. It is daunting to think of challenges that we have in front of us often. But if we just start, we have, the opportunity to be successful. And so that's one of the things I learned through walking.
And as you were describing that, I was thinking that this experience is really just then, I think, and what you were inferring is it's like any experience in our life. You just take it a step at a time, a moment at a time, a day at a time, rather than thinking, well, I just have to, what's the answer there? To have some patience and be gentle with ourselves, I guess.
Absolutely. There is a lot of that. There is a lot of just kind of understanding that we're doing the best we can at any given moment. And sometimes doing the best we can is going slowly, and sometimes it's powering up a hill. Sometimes it's walking alone. Sometimes it's chatting with new friends. Sometimes it's, really just trying to kind of push yourself to go just a little bit farther when your feet hurt and your back aches. And there are other days when you feel like you can walk forever. So it's all of it, right? It's all of it. And I think the beauty of walking these long walks, the beauty of the pilgrimage, is that in many ways it mimics life. And that metaphor becomes clearer and clearer the more you walk.
Well, one of the things that is so amazing to me is that you did it solo. And many people do, but others do it with a friend or a spouse in some cases. So to do it solo in a foreign country, I mean, I could think of maybe going on a hike, maybe solo here where I live, but traveling somewhere on my own in foreign territory, was that at all daunting to you, Suzanne?
Not for the Camino, and the reason being is that I had traveled quite a bit. I traveled a lot as a kid, and I traveled solo a few years earlier when I went to teach in Barcelona for 6 months, and I went by myself. However, parts of it, that initial being alone is, it's daunting. It can be a little bit scary. Not so much getting there, but some of the things that we routinely are socialized to do with others can get difficult. So, for example, eating out was a real challenge for me. When I taught in Barcelona, I never went out to eat by myself in a restaurant, and I was there for 6 months. I either went with a friend or I got takeout food. And I realized when I came home from that trip that I was disappointed in myself because I hadn't pushed myself to do something that made me uncomfortable. And so when I walked the Camino, I promised myself I was going to do that. Another was that I had learned Spanish when I was in school, when I was in high school, and so I knew some Spanish, and then I'd taken a number of Spanish classes and was then afraid to speak it because I was afraid of making mistakes. And so that was another thing, right? I pushed myself. Okay, you're going to speak Spanish. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay, right? I used the wrong tense and the wrong word, and I can't think of what I want, and I rely on hand signals. And for me, I had this expectation that I was going to be perfect, right? I was going to get it right. And I had to let go of that. I had to let go of that desire to get it right and to be okay with making mistakes. So there was some of that that showed up in that walk that I would say was rooted in, we're just who we are. And whether we go with a friend or not, in the end, the person that puts their head on the pillow at night is really just us. So we really are solo in many ways.
Right. And so having done these things, those two, let's take the eating on your own. You did that. You spoke Spanish. And then the feeling as a result of having done both. Mm-hmm. I think, again, we're finding how that isn't just those things. It's how it mimics our life. But for you, what was your realization?
Well, I think you build confidence, right? You're like, you do it and you go, oh, okay, I can do it. And the first night that I ate alone was the first night in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, where I go to a restaurant and I sit in the restaurant. And actually, it turns out that sitting next to me is a couple that I meet that I then befriend and walk with for a good chunk of the Camino. So it afforded me opportunities that I wouldn't have had I chosen not to take that step. And I think that's a lot of what I learned was each choice I made, and of course we're always in choice in our lives, whether we realize it or not, but each choice I made led to an opportunity. And then how do I recognize the opportunity and then take advantage of that opportunity? And so I made some really wonderful friends by putting myself out there and taking that risk and going alone. Had I gone with a friend, I would have leaned on my friend to be my social connection for much of the walk. And of course we would have met people. But it's very different than, going and really having no one to talk to except yourself unless you reach out, unless you take that step. And that's what going solo allowed me to do, was that acknowledgement and that recognition that the choices that I created opportunities and led to experiences and growth from that journey.
And from that, and I think I saw this on your website, but I think this is just a truth for any of us. When we do these things, we realize that we are so much stronger than we ever realized that we are.
Absolutely. My career, I've been a social worker since I was just starting in my career. And one of the things that I've had the absolute gift and opportunity to experience as I've practiced social work is meeting people who are struggling. And so what I have learned from watching people who are in real pain and in real difficult points in their lives, I have been able to watch them grow and change and bounce back and make new choices. And so what I've learned is that all of us are far more resilient and far stronger than we give ourselves credit for. We often get sidelined by fear, but in fact, if we can move beyond our fear, we have tremendous capacity. And I think a lot of my life, my professional experience has taught me that. And then, of course, I think all of us, if we look at our own lives and look at the challenges we've all walked through, sometimes we handle them beautifully, sometimes we stumble, but all of that helps us grow. And so, yes, I think we are far stronger than we often realize.
And here, this opportunity presenting itself, and for you, its presentation was actually watching a movie that inspired you to do this, right?
Right. So I was at a point in my life, my kids were grown and out of the home. It was just my husband and I. We have a nice home, but it was a little empty without the kids. And I was about to turn 60, and it was pretty clear to me that I was moving into a transitional part of my life. And we had just watched the movie The Way, which is the really wonderful Emilio Estevez movie about a father who goes to Spain to collect his son's ashes, and then ends up walking the walk that his son didn't get to do. It stars Martin Sheen. So Emilio directs his dad in this, and it's a really beautiful movie. And I had seen that, and I had also simultaneously read Cheryl Strayed's book, Wild. And both of those journeys kind of lit a spark in me to do something similar, to challenge myself, to step outside my comfort zone and really kind of mark this moment in my life with something big. And so one afternoon in the fall of 2018, I said to my husband, I'm going to walk the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. And he looked at me and he said, have a good time. Because he is not a walker. He's not interested in walking. He prefers to read books and stay close to home. And I am the traveler in the family. And so that began the plan. And, of course, walking the Camino, because it's in Europe, because it's in France and Spain, was something that was really appealing to me. I am a big Europhile. I love going to Europe. I love traveling all over Europe, particularly in Spain and Italy, which are the two countries that I have been to the most. And it was kind of a no-brainer. And so I just started the plan. And by May of the following year, I was standing in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, ready to start.
The thing, as you describe that, Suzanne, is that if we're feeling restless, if we're feeling that something needs to be different in our life, the answers are around us. They may not be perhaps found like we think a lightning bolt will help us. But here you saw a movie, you then read the book, and you realize, it resonated with you. This is what you needed to do. And I think it's beautiful for us to be paying such attention in our life, be really conscious in the moments.
I do too. And it's funny because I often talk about, right now I teach counseling and psychology and social work to students at the university. And one of the things I say to them is my favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz. I've loved that movie since I was a young girl. And the scene that I always come to, there's two scenes in that movie that I think are really profound. One is when Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, and she has the opportunity to go one way or the other way, and she makes a choice, and the choice leads to what comes next. And so that idea that at every moment we are in choice, and those choices lead us down a path that had we made a different choice, we would go down a different path. And so the acknowledgement that we are in choice and that those choices have consequences, I think, is really important. And the other is the scene at the end where she wakes up and she's in her bedroom and surrounded by all the farmhands, who, of course, are the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. And she says, if I ever go looking again, I won't look any further than my own backyard. And I think that speaks to what you just said, which is the inspiration for those choices, for making the choices to live the lives that we inevitably lead, are all around us at every moment. And often we're looking somewhere else. We're looking outside ourselves. We're looking outside our communities. We're looking outside the inspiration in our lives. But we don't really need to look very far. It's all there if we just pay attention. And so I think your point is really well made, that that's really the work, is how do we tune in? And is one of the gifts of walking. It's one of the gifts of the Camino, which is when you are walking for 30, 31, 32 days, you are in the moment. you are listening to the birds. You are feeling the sun on your skin. You are hearing footsteps come up behind you. You are experiencing the pain in your feet. All of it is present focused, and that's incredible. You know, you've left behind all the noise, and you're just in the moment.
Oh, it's just so wonderful to have that experience. And the thing is, you've described what you encountered and your insights and realizations in this book, Estrellas, Moments of Illumination Along El Camino de Santiago, a memoir. It is really so beautifully written. And I feel even, if we were not to decide to take that journey, here we have a vicarious way of experiencing it. And it too might give us those insights as to what our next step might be, where it might lead us.
Oh, I think that's right. And at the end, I note, at the end when I wrote the book, actually, we were in COVID. You really couldn't go anywhere, right? We were sort of locked down, and I would walk every day. And as I was walking in my neighborhood, I was trying to stay present and stay mindful of what was happening around me, what I was seeing, what I was hearing. And I think that practice is just one that can really enrich our daily lives. I don't think it's necessary to travel to Spain, although if that's what you want to do, or to travel to Italy or walk, there's so many wonderful walks around the world. By all means do it, because I think travel, I'm a huge advocate of travel. I think travel helps us grow and exposes us to ways of life and people and places we would not ordinarily have the opportunity to experience. But I do think that you can be more present. You can take little mini caminos in your own neighborhood, in your own life. And, even something like, sitting, I was at the Social Security office the other day because I recently turned 65. And I keep saying to myself, how did that happen? But of course it does. And I was sitting at the Social Security office, and I thought to myself, this room is full of people that I don't know, and that have fascinating stories and have lived fascinating lives. And so I, chatted with the woman sitting next to me. We can open ourselves up to new experiences and new people and new things in our daily lives. And so, I think that would be one of the things that I would hope people take away from the story is that, how can I, as the reader, kind of create more opportunities to explore and grow in my own life? How can I take those sort of mini journeys, those mini caminos, where I can learn something new, and I can stretch myself and make myself uncomfortable and consequently grow.
And then I would add a caveat, I think, to that, because it is also true, is not to let a number, so you were saying you were at the Social Security office, not to let any numbers define who we are. It's just a number. But, while we are here living and breathing, it's just opportunities to keep on growing.
Oh, absolutely. And, in truth, and I talk about this in the book, I met a guy who was 74 walking and another gentleman who was 86 walking. So it is not that there's a point at which you are, you should be defined by the age that the birth certificate says you are, right?
Right.
We can push ourselves no matter what age we are. We can challenge ourselves to grow no matter what age we are.
And, as I was sharing this with my husband, I said to him about, walking into your 80s even. And then I remembered doing an interview maybe even 15 years ago with a woman called Granny D. She wrote the book. Does that ring a bell? She wrote a book
Yes.
called Walking Across America in My 92nd Year. So she did that. So yes, this any of this challenges us to just live life and experience and keep on growing.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I'd like to mention is that when I came back from the Camino, it was a tough time, and the isolation was very real, and it was very painful for a lot of folks. And one of the things that, one of the gifts of the Camino for me was the relationships that I built with other pilgrims, many of whom I am still in communication with and have developed deep friendships with. And I realized that for me, that gift of reaching out and whether it be just to have a chat, whether it be to offer someone some help, whether it be to learn something new about someone else, that also is invigorating and life-giving and growth-producing. And so when I came back and we were in the middle of this terrible pandemic and feeling very isolated, I started a podcast. It's called From Sparks to Light. And the idea of the podcast was to find people who were making a difference in their communities, who literally were taking their passions, their loves, their enthusiasms, their experiences, and getting involved. And so the podcast now, we just finished the third season. I'm about to start the fourth season in the fall, was another way of continuing to travel around the world and learn about people and hear their stories. I'm fascinated by the human story. And meeting people from South Africa and Australia and right in my own backyard who are working to feed the hungry or to work with folks that have Alzheimer's disease or dementia or to support LGBTQ folks. It's amazing to me. The human spirit is extraordinary to me. And again, for me, it was sort of a way of all of it coming together to get back to what we talked about at the beginning of this interview. Human resilience is extraordinary, right? How people take challenges, obstacles, and create opportunity. And so From Sparks to Light really is my way of continuing that journey that began on the Camino.
And that sounds fascinating. I did see that on your website. So I think that is one good way to access the podcast. True?
Yes, it's also on all the podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, and such. So you just have to look for From Sparks to Light is the name of the podcast. And my website, SuzanneMaggio.com, is also a great way to kind of read stories about some of the folks, to access my books if folks are interested. I have another memoir called The Cardinal Club, which is about my mother and my relationship. My mother passed away from Alzheimer's disease, and sort of looking at that journey through the lens of Alzheimer's. And also, just information about, what I'm doing and where I'm going to be and what I'm working on now. That's all part of what you can find if you go to SuzanneMaggio.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. That really encapsulated everything. So I'm glad you were able to succinctly wrap that up for us, Suzanne.
Thank you.
And I so appreciate your being with us today to give us these insights. And I think it's such great inspiration and, just who knows what kind of answers it's giving to whomever is hearing it in the moment and being able to create their own journeys and find their own travel locally or, as you say, traveling internationally, which is such a great experience. So thank you for your time. Thank you for Estrellas. And I really hope that it all continues unfolding for you as well.
Thanks so much. It's really been fun chatting with you, and, hope to do it again sometime in the future.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Thank you. That brings us to the end of a very full hour of Inspirational Women with Suzanne Maggio and Sunday Morning Magazine with Christina Dent and Pat Ruse. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I will get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Just click on the Listen tab, then podcasts that either of the show names, and then look for the guest names. I now wish you and your family a day of having time together, sharing stories, concerns, just being. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning.